All right, Chris and Ken here. Chris behind the camera. We've got Ken working on a S60R Stage 3 car that's fitted with the IPD 4T4 Stage 3 turbocharger. And with that, we need to run different injectors, which IPD has 650cc injectors that we make for this specific kit. Ken's already got the injector cover removed, and he's going to go into all the differences between the injectors that come on the car and the ones that we fit to our Stage 3 performance kit. Here we go, Ken.
Okay, these are the Bosch injectors we're using. They do come with an electrical harness adapter so that you can plug directly in. Now, one of the shortcomings of this is that it makes these connectors taller. Now, if you're vain, say vain enough that you're required to do a metallic paint fade on your injector cover, and you want to put that injector cover back on your car, they're going to stick up too high and not let you put the injector cover on. One of the things you can do, I've already got this all loosened, is you can disconnect this entire harness, pull out the injector rail, and when you're installing the new injectors in the rail, if you simply turn them over so the injector plug is down here, then you can run the harness behind the rail, and then that will allow you to put the cover back on. It's just a vanity thing. You don't really have to do it, but it's nice. So here's the complete fuel injector rail assembly with the stock Bosch greens. We'll go over to the bench. We'll show you how to take the rail apart and install the new injectors. Removing this injector rail from the car can be, well, it can be a bit of a fight. There are two different styles of clips here. This one is a squeeze to disconnect clip. A lot of the cars have one that has a Torx screw that goes right through the middle of it. You have to undo and pull the clip around the outside. A couple of different kinds, not that difficult to figure out. Once you get it on the bench, the whole rail is simply held together with these Torx screws that hold this lock plate on. The lock plate is what sets the depth of the injectors, and it's critical that you get the lock plate in the right grooves on the injectors so that you don't end up with air leaks around the tips of the injectors. Now, I'm not sure if they're all the same, but on this particular rail, it's a Torx 20 bit to simply remove these 3 Torx bits. Remove the 3 screws, and then what you'll see is this plate actually slides out like this. And that actually locks everything in place on the rail, including the fitting for the fuel. This is where you go to replace these seals if you have leakage issues. The injectors come with a full new set of seals. Now you would very simply at this point wiggle out each of the old injectors, and then you would install a new injector, noting, as we said before, that we're putting the plug in the opposite direction. Alright, this is critical. The injector seal at the tip, where the injector goes into the manifold, has this little rubber ring. There's one on the green original one, and this is the one on ours. If you don't get this ring in the correct depth, then you end up with air leaks, which can actually cause lean problems in individual cylinders and cause damage to the engine. You don't want that. So the distance between this O-ring and this O-ring is very critical. And how far these sit into the manifold and into the rail is critical. If you buy universal off-the-shelf injectors, what you'll usually find is that this groove is not correct there. So what we've done is we've custom made these 650cc injectors to correctly fit the fuel rail on this car. And you're going to use this ring up here to correctly set the depth so you end up with the same injector overall depth that you had before. Okay. So as we said before, since we're trying to maintain the injector cover on this car, we're going to put the injector plugs in facing the other direction. So they're going to face down under the rail instead of over the rail. Makes for a cleaner install. It's not really necessary. You can put them up top if you want, but you can't install your injector rail cover then. The trick is, as we mentioned, the grooves have to line up. As you put this back in, every one of these notches has to slide into the correct groove on the injector, and you have to get the groove on the fuel fitting here. It's really fiddly, it's patience trying, but if you get all 5 grooves lined up correctly, you can lay a straight edge across the top of the injectors and see that they're all even, then you won't have a problem. Okay, got all 5 grooves lined up and the fuel connector. This is a really fiddly job, and you may end up doing it 5 or 6 times before you get them all right. If you're not positive, you can always just take a straight edge and check and make sure that all the injectors line up at the same depth to make sure you have them all in the right groove. When you go to install this in the car, you'll see that like we have a bolt connector here, so a lot of times we will simply turn the injector a few degrees so you can get the plug into it correctly. It's not a big deal, it's got brand new seals, piece of cake. Okay. Okay, then we're simply going to put the 3 Torx bolts back in. And these are what actually secure the entire assembly together so that your seals don't leak. Alright, then we'll go back over to the car and we will put this back in. So we have the rail in here. We tighten it down with these 2 bolt fittings, which also hold the injector cover. You'll note that we have all the injectors seated in deeply enough that you don't see the O-rings. You don't want to see the O-rings, that's a problem. You get the fuel piece, make sure you get it clipped back in firmly, whether it's the bolted one or the one that clicks in like this one. Otherwise, when you key the car, you'd have fuel all over the place.
Yep, and now that the injectors have actually been rotated with the electrical components facing the opposite direction, what we've done is we went ahead and routed the harness to the front of the rail instead of behind it. As you can see, Ken's getting ready to plug all those in here, and then we're going to go ahead and cycle the key and go from there. Make sure and cycle the key before you go for a test drive and double check to ensure that you don't have any fuel leaks and that all the O-rings are seated properly. We appreciate you tuning in, looking at our installation guide or overview of our 650cc injectors.